Welcome to our deep dive today.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at a really fascinating perspective on the Quran.
Okay.
And we're not going to get into any kind of religious debates or doctrines. We're
Sure.
going to be approaching this philosophically
Yeah.
using excerpts from Decoding the Quran in Chronological Order of Revelation, which you were kind enough to share with me.
Happy to.
So it'll be a deep dive into the ideas and how they tackle these huge concepts like faith and reality and what it even means to be human.
It's an interpretation that really, I think, encourages exploration of the Quran
Yeah.
beyond conventional interpretations.
Well, and there are some really out there ideas in
Yeah.
here. Like it reinterprets some Quranic verses you might already be familiar with.
Right.
It even introduces this wild idea of humans as like personified Quran.
Yeah.
It's super intriguing. And then there's a whole model of existence that's multidimensional.
Right.
Kind of like, have you ever seen the movie The Matrix?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
It's definitely a very unique approach.
Yeah.
It pushes us to really question our assumptions about things
Yeah.
and explore the Quran from a fresh perspective.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
One of the first things that jumped out at me was how this text decodes Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Right.
You know that phrase we always hear at the beginning of chapters? I always thought of it kind of like as like the opening,
Yeah.
like a formality.
Uh-huh.
But this text is arguing that it's way more than that.
Yeah, it's arguing that Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is like a whole chapter in itself,
Ah, wow.
a foundational chapter, and that it actually holds the key to understanding the Quran's true message.
That's so interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
So tell me more about this hidden meaning.
So the key really lies in that letter B.
Okay.
The author suggests that the B stands for something much deeper than just like implicit duality,
Okay.
which is how it's been traditionally understood.
Right.
So it points to a concept that challenges the conventional idea that God and humanity are separate.
So instead of God up in the heavens and me down here,
Right.
this text is suggesting a more unified understanding.
Exactly. And the author really emphasizes that if you misinterpret the meaning of B, then that leads to this misconception of separation,
Mm-hmm.
which has had a huge impact on how people see the Quran.
That makes sense. So if we're not separate from the divine, where do humans fit into all of this?
Well, this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This text claims that humans are the Quran.
Hold on, humans are the Quran. What
Yeah.
does that even mean? Like, are we literally talking scriptures?
Not literally.
Okay.
It's more about recognizing the potential that we carry inside of us.
Okay.
The text emphasizes that each of us carries this pure universal consciousness,
Okay.
and that this consciousness is the essence of the Quran.
Interesting.
It's about seeing ourselves as reflections of the divine.
So how does this connect to the actual Quranic verses?
So the text highlights this contrast
Okay.
between those who are only focused on their physical bodies
Right.
and those who are connected to this deeper consciousness.
Okay.
And it uses the analogy of cattle, which is
Mhm.
referenced in Quran 25.44, to describe those who deny their true nature.
So you're saying that if you're just living through your physical body,
Yeah.
driven by your basic instincts,
Right.
that's kind of like living like an animal.
Uh-huh.
But if you connect with this deeper consciousness, then that's when you're really living, in alignment with who you truly are.
Precisely.
Oh.
And the author connects this directly with the idea of faith.
Okay, so there's more to faith than just believing in God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The text proposes these two stages of faith in Allah.
Okay.
The first stage is this common belief
Yeah.
in an external creator,
Right.
but then there's this second, deeper stage of faith that goes beyond that initial understanding.
Okay, I'm really intrigued now.
Yeah.
What does this deeper level of faith look like?
So it's this understanding that our reality is composed of these divine qualities, which the text calls the names of Allah.
The name.
Yeah, and the idea is that we're constantly manifesting these qualities in our actions,
Huh.
and that's what makes us servants of Allah.
So it's less about like worshiping this God out there
Right.
and more about recognizing the divine within us
Yeah,
and letting that guide how we act.
exactly.
Wow.
And that raises these questions about what it truly means to serve God.
Yeah.
What if the key to spiritual awareness is understanding our own essence?
Whoa.
Right.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. But before we dive into that, I want to hear more about this multidimensional existence you mentioned earlier. It sounded pretty mind-blowing.
It definitely challenges our usual way of thinking about reality.
Yeah.
The text proposes that there are actually multiple dimensions at play,
Okay.
each with its own unique function.
Like, give me some examples.
Okay, well, it describes this dimension of acts,
Acts. Okay.
which is basically the physical world
Right.
where we carry out our actions. Then there's the dimension of power, which is where these forces like angels operate.
So there's like this hidden realm where angels are running around influencing things.
Well, the author doesn't describe it as angels running around.
Right.
It's more about understanding that there are unseen forces at play,
Right.
and these forces are represented by angels.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is that the text describes Rasuls and saints as like expressions of these angelic forces here on earth.
That's wild.
Right.
So you're saying that saints and prophets are like conduits
Yeah.
for these higher dimensional powers.
It's a compelling idea, isn't it?
It's straight out of the Matrix.
It suggests this much deeper connection between the physical and spiritual realms
Yeah.
than we might typically imagine.
Right.
That these individuals might be tapping into these unseen forces
Yeah.
and manifesting them in our world.
It really does make you think about what else is out there that we just can't perceive.
Right.
Like, it's kind of making my head spin a little.
It is a lot to take in,
Mm.
but it's these kinds of challenges that can really help us expand how we understand reality.
Right.
And this leads us to another fascinating idea from the text,
Okay.
something it calls the trigger system.
Oh, the trigger system.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Okay, so imagine a grand symphony
Okay.
where every note is like meticulously composed
Uh-huh.
and the outcome is already determined.
Okay.
But within that predetermined structure,
Yeah.
each musician has the freedom to interpret their own part.
Okay. I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So the trigger system is kind of like that symphony.
Okay.
The text explains that these divine qualities, the names,
Right.
they interact with each other.
Yeah.
They trigger one another, and this creates a chain of events that's already predetermined.
Wait, I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
How can we have free will if everything is already predetermined?
That's a question that has puzzled philosophers for centuries.
Right.
But this text offers a unique perspective. It suggests that free will operates within this framework of pre-eternal knowledge.
I'm not sure I follow.
Yeah.
Are you saying we have choices, but those choices are already known?
Yeah, it's a very mind-bending concept.
It is.
But remember that symphony analogy?
Okay, yeah.
So even though the overall composition is predetermined,
Yeah.
each musician still has the freedom to interpret their part.
Right, so it's like our lives are part of this giant cosmic composition,
Yeah.
but we have the freedom to choose how we play our individual part.
That's a great way to think about it.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is, and the text goes on to explain that even though the overall outcome might be predetermined,
Yeah.
our individual choices still hold immense significance.
Okay.
It's like each choice creates a ripple effect,
Ah.
influencing the nuances of this grand symphony of existence.
Okay.
Our choices matter, even if we can't always see the full extent of their impact.
That analogy actually makes a lot of sense.
Good.
But I'm still curious about those names. Can you give me some specific examples of these divine qualities
Sure.
and how they might manifest in our lives?
Absolutely. There are some fascinating examples in the text. We'll explore the meaning of al-Mughni, which is all about enrichment and emancipation, and al-Wali, which governs manifestation.
Wow.
And then we'll dive into al-Muke, the name associated with sustenance and provision.
Those sound intriguing.
Yeah, they are.
I can't wait to dive into those.
Let's take a moment to let all this sink in.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process, and we'll continue exploring these concepts in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, I think my brain has had a few minutes to like absorb all of that,
Good.
and I'm ready for more, especially those names you were mentioning.
Yeah.
They sound really powerful.
They are indeed. And the text gives us some captivating meanings for them.
Yeah.
Let's start with al-Mughni. It represents enrichment,
Okay.
both materially and spiritually.
So it's not just about having, tons of money and possessions. Not at all. The text actually connects al-Mughni to the idea of fakr, which means like nothingness or poverty. So it might sound paradoxical,
Yeah.
but it suggests that true enrichment comes from recognizing our own nothingness
Okay.
in the face of the divine.
So instead of chasing after like external wealth,
Right.
al-Mughni is about cultivating this inner richness,
Exactly.
sense of abundance that comes from connecting with something greater.
And this really ties back to that idea of humans as personified Qurans.
Right.
If we are reflections of the divine, as the text suggests,
Yeah.
then That potential for limitless abundance is already within us.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
Oh.
Okay, what about some of the other names?
Well, Awali is particularly fascinating.
Oh, it governs manifestation.
Manifestation.
Yeah.
The process of bringing things into existence.
Okay.
The text describes all of creation as like a manifestation of these divine qualities.
Wow.
Orchestrated by Al-Wali.
So everything we see around us, even ourselves,
Yeah.
is a projection of these divine names.
That's the idea. And it's not just about the physical world either.
Okay.
Al-Wali also plays a role in our spiritual development, kind of subtly guiding us towards realizing our true nature.
That makes me think about that multidimensional model we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Is it possible that Al-Wali is operating behind the scenes in those other dimensions?
Yeah.
Like orchestrating events to guide us towards a certain outcome?
I love that connection.
Yeah.
It really highlights how interconnected all these concepts are.
Yeah.
And then there's Al-Muket,
Okay.
which is all about sustenance and provision.
So is Al-Muket making sure we have food on the table and a roof over our heads?
Well, it encompasses that,
Okay.
but it's even more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
Al-Muket provides the conditions for everything to exist and to thrive.
Wow.
It's the force that sustains all of creation, both physically and spiritually.
So it's like the ultimate caretaker,
Yeah,
making sure everything has what it needs.
it's amazing, isn't it?
It is, and it makes you think about all the little things we take for granted.
Right.
Like the sun rising each morning or the rain that nourishes the earth. You know, it's
Yeah.
like we're constantly being provided for, even when we don't realize it.
Exactly. And recognizing that,
Yeah.
feeling that gratitude for those blessings,
Right.
that's actually a crucial aspect of this perspective.
Interesting.
The text emphasizes that appreciating these divine qualities manifesting in our lives is essential for our spiritual growth.
So you're saying that like being thankful isn't just good manners.
Right.
It's like a key part of connecting with our true selves and with the divine.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head.
Wow.
When we start to see the world through the lens of these names,
Yeah.
then we begin to recognize the divine hand in everything. And that naturally cultivates this deep sense of thankfulness, which actually reminds me, we need to talk about the author's emphasis on reading the Quran in chronological order.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a few times. Why is that chronological order so important?
Well, the text argues that if you rearrange the Quran
Okay.
based on the order in which the verses were revealed,
Yeah.
that this unlocks a hidden message, a deeper understanding that you might miss if you read it in the traditional order.
So is there like a secret code in there?
You could say that the author gives these specific examples of how certain surahs like Al-Adiyat and Anas take on new meanings when you consider them in their chronological context.
Wow. I'm genuinely curious now.
Yeah.
What kind of new insights do we gain by reading it chronologically?
The author believes that reading chronologically reveals a more profound and unified message.
Okay.
Verses that might seem disconnected in the traditional order
Yeah.
suddenly connect in a way that illuminates the Quran's true purpose.
So it's about understanding how the message evolved over time.
Exactly.
With each revelation building on the ones that came before.
That's right. It's fascinating, isn't it?
I have to admit that is a really fascinating concept. I'm actually tempted to try reading it that way now.
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
It can offer some really powerful insights and deepen your understanding, regardless of your background or beliefs. But let's get back to those divine names for a moment.
Okay.
The text argues that these divine qualities aren't just abstract concepts.
Yeah.
They actually manifest in our lives and shape our experiences.
That's what I'm really interested in, the practical implications of all this.
Right.
So can you give me some concrete examples of how these names might show up in our daily lives?
Of course, remember Al-Muket.
Al-Muket.
The name associated with provision, the text, uses this really compelling example to illustrate how this name might manifest.
Okay.
It describes this scene from the Quran, where Moses and his people are wandering in the desert, desperate for food and water.
Right, and they were like complaining, wishing they had stayed in Egypt where they at least had food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, seemingly out of nowhere, they're provided with manna and quails, these miraculous sources of sustenance.
Right.
And the text suggests this was Al-Muket at work, providing for them in their time of need.
So it's not about like, you know, physical food magically appearing out of thin air.
Right.
It's about recognizing that even when things seem bleak,
Yes.
we're always being provided for, often in unexpected ways.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about having faith that the divine is always working to support us, even when we can't see it. And this doesn't just apply to material needs either.
Yeah?
Think about a time when you felt lost or confused,
Uh-huh.
and then out of the blue, you received some guidance or inspiration
Yeah.
that helped you find your way.
You know what? That actually happened to me recently.
Really?
I was struggling with a major decision and I felt totally stuck.
Ah,
But then I randomly came across this quote,
okay.
and it perfectly captured what I needed to hear at that moment.
Wow.
It honestly felt like a sign, like someone was guiding me.
That's a perfect example of how these names can manifest.
Yeah.
That could very well be Al-Hadi,
Al-Hadi.
the
Okay.
name associated with guidance working in your life. And remember Al-Wali.
The one that governs manifestation.
Yes. The text suggests that our actions, our thoughts, our intentions can actually act as triggers for these names to manifest in our reality.
So we're not just like passive recipients of fate.
Right.
Our choices actually influence how these divine qualities show up in our lives.
Precisely. It suggests that we have a much more active role in shaping our reality than we might realize.
That's amazing.
The text emphasizes that by living in alignment with our true nature,
Yeah.
by embodying these divine qualities, we can tap into our limitless potential and create a reality that reflects our highest aspirations.
This is all starting to feel like a giant interconnected puzzle.
It is.
And we're slowly like putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
But there's one piece I'm still struggling with.
Okay.
That whole idea of the trigger system and pre-eternal knowledge.
Right.
How can we truly have free will if everything is already predetermined?
That's a tough one, and there are no easy answers. But the text offers a perspective that might help us reconcile these seemingly opposing ideas.
Okay, I'm listening.
It suggests that free will operates within the framework of this pre-eternal knowledge.
So you're saying we have choices, but those choices are already known.
I know it's a mind-bending concept.
It really is.
But remember that symphony analogy we talked about?
The symphony, okay, yeah.
Even though the overall composition is predetermined, each musician still have the freedom to interpret their part in their own unique way.
Right, so it's like our lives are part of this grand cosmic composition,
Exactly.
but we still have the freedom to choose how we play our individual part.
That's a great way to think about it. And what's truly remarkable
Yeah.
is that even though the ultimate outcome might be known,
Mhm.
the text emphasizes that our individual choices still matter.
They do.
They shape the subtle nuances of the grand symphony of existence, the tiny variations that make each performance unique. Our choices create ripples that impact the whole tapestry of existence, even if we can't always grasp the full extent of their influence.
This whole conversation has been incredibly thought-provoking.
Good.
I feel like I'm seeing the Quran and myself in a whole new light.
That's wonderful to hear.
But before I get completely lost in like existential contemplation,
Right.
I have one more question.
Okay.
The author talks about the importance of living in accordance with our true nature.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like in practice?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
And it's one that ultimately each individual has to answer for themselves.
Right.
But the text offers some valuable clues.
Right.
Remember that idea of humans as personified Qurans.
Yeah, we are the embodiment of the divine message.
Exactly. So living in accordance with our true nature means striving to align our thoughts, actions, and intentions with the qualities represented by the Quran, those divine names we've been discussing. It's about cultivating compassion, generosity, gratitude, and a deep sense of connection to the divine, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
So it's not about blindly following rules or performing rituals. It's
Yeah.
about embodying those core principles in our daily lives.
Yes.
And letting them guide our interactions with others.
That's the essence of it. It's
Yeah.
about striving to become living examples of the Quranic message, reflecting those divine qualities in our everyday choices and actions. It's a lifelong journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth, a continuous process of aligning ourselves with our highest potential.
That's both incredibly inspiring and a little daunting.
It is.
It sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is a great responsibility, but it's not about achieving some kind of perfect state.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey of growth and transformation,
Yeah.
recognizing our inherent connection to the divine, and striving to manifest that divinity in the world. And remember, the text emphasizes that we're not alone on this path. The divine is always with us, guiding and supporting us every step of the way.
I need a moment to let all of this sink in. This has been such an enriching conversation.
It has.
And I feel like my understanding of the Quran has expanded in ways I never imagined.
That's the beauty of exploration and open-mindedness.
Yeah.
It challenges us to question our assumptions, broadens our perspectives
Right.
and invites us to see the world through fresh eyes.
It definitely feels like we've only scratched the surface.
We have.
I'm already eager to delve deeper into this text and uncover more of its hidden wisdom.
Me too.
But for now, I think we need to take a short break to let these profound ideas settle in our minds.
That sounds good.
We'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive and explore what lasting insights we can glean from this extraordinary perspective on the Quran.
Okay, wow. That was a lot.
Yeah,
My mind is still like buzzing with all those ideas.
it's a powerful perspective for sure.
Yeah, it really is. And as we were talking,
Yeah,
I keep coming back to this idea that we are the Quran.
like we embody that divine message.
Yeah.
If that's true. I mean,
Wow.
it has like huge implications for how we live,
It does.
how we interact with the world, even how we understand our potential.
Absolutely. That's a core message that runs throughout this whole interpretation.
Yeah.
It's a call to action almost,
Ah.
like an invitation to step into our true nature
Okay.
and embody these divine qualities.
Yeah. So it's not just about passively, believing or following rules. It's
Okay.
about actively striving to like manifest these qualities.
Yes, in our thoughts, our words, our actions.
It's about becoming like a living example
Exactly.
of that message.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about aligning our lives with our highest aspirations, our truest selves.
Right.
And the fascinating thing is this perspective suggests that by doing so, we actually participate in the unfolding of the divine plan.
Whoa.
Our choices, our intentions, our actions, they all have an impact on the grand symphony of existence.
That's a really empowering idea.
It is.
It suggests we're not just like helpless pawns in some predetermined game. We actually have the power to shape things.
We do, to create a world that reflects our deepest values and aspirations.
Exactly. And that power comes from recognizing our true nature,
Yeah.
our connection to the divine.
It's about understanding that we're not separate from God, from the universe,
Mm.
from each other.
Right.
We're all interconnected threads in this magnificent tapestry of creation.
Thinking about all this makes those seemingly contradictory ideas
Yeah.
about free will and pre-eternal knowledge a little bit easier to grasp.
I agree.
It's like, yeah, okay, the overall composition might be predetermined,
Okay.
but within that, we have the freedom to improvise,
Yes.
to bring our own unique expression.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is, our choices matter,
They do.
even if we can't always see the full scope of their impact.
Exactly. And that's what makes this journey of life so exciting and meaningful.
It really does.
The constant process of discovery, of growth, of becoming more fully who we were meant to be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway you'd like listeners to really ponder?
You are not separate from the divine. The Quranic message, the divine wisdom, it's not something external to you.
Right.
It's woven into the very fabric of your being.
Yeah.
You are a personified Quran, a living expression of the divine.
Powerful stuff.
And recognizing that truth can transform your life in profound and beautiful ways.
That's a powerful message to end on.
It is.
One that invites us to look within, embrace our true nature,
Yes.
and step boldly into the fullness of our being.
And remember, this is just one interpretation among many.
Right.
The beauty of the Quran is that it offers endless possibilities for exploration and understanding.
Absolutely.
Keep seeking, keep questioning, keep deepening your own personal connection.
Thank you so much for taking us on this incredible journey.
It's been my pleasure.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm excited to keep exploring these ideas.
That's wonderful to hear. May your journey be filled with wonder and insight and the joy of uncovering those hidden treasures within yourself and within the Quran.
Beautiful. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity, inspired you to explore these ideas further. Keep those minds open, those hearts curious, and keep diving deep.